Hey guys, here we go with today's shave, and we have used the Fine Santal Absolute every other day this month basically. And so let's switch off, try a new soap to me, Peach and Cognac from Ariana and Evans, and it's in the new Kaizen base apparently, and it smells really good from the puck. The Nacet, again, I'll be using, and today's use will be 346. We'll put it in the razor we've been using for the most part, the special edition of the Piccolo from Fatip, and I did sub out the gold handle, the gold base plate open comb for the I can't remember if it's the nickel or the chrome one from another Piccolo. And then also a brush I haven't shown you guys in quite a while. This is a Frank Shaving Silvertip. This is their Silvertip. I like the backbone on this. The tips aren't quite as soft as my Golden Nib Silvertips, but it's just a 24 and it's a really big brush. So maybe if you think the Golden Nib is a little too soft for you, then this guy might be, something to think about. And I guess let's go ahead and put the blade in the razor. This soap we're going to be using today has tons of notes. We'll talk about those. It may say Peach and Cognac. There's my little 3 dots to kind of identify that this is the same blade. Check for alignment. It's a little bit off, so doesn't take very long at all. There we go. Okay, I haven't used this before. Now it smells really good. It smells fruity, and there's some a little bit of spice notes in there as well. Now there's a whole host of other notes in there, so we'll see if they unfold as we go along, see how it changes once it gets wet. But I am going to scoop this just in case this soap doesn't agree with me somehow, because it has been just scraped before by the previous owner, and I'm going to just kind of keep that heritage going. And also this helps me to have a good idea about how this soap might compare in usage, if it's like other soaps like Holy Cow and maybe the Zingari Mancebo that might require a little more product to get good lathers. Then that's good to know. So we'll press that into the bottom. This is a 1/4 teaspoon measure. We'll press it into the bottom of this bowl here. This is a very soft soap. You could even say it's more of a cream, really. As such, you don't have to be as picky about pressing it into a thin layer on the bottom, because even if it gets a chunk of it lifts up off the bottom and goes around with the brush, it's so soft that it's going to be worked into the lather anyway. Get my face wet, and we will start building up the lather. I'm going to shake out most of the water from the brush. Of course, you can start with more water in your brush if you want. No problem there. Most soaps are fine with that. If you want to have that as a shortcut, no problem. Starting with less water in my brush allows me to tell you guys a more accurate measure of how much water I add, so that's why I do it. So this brush has a distinction of being pretty much the only Silvertip that I've ever had that started out kind of prickly. Couldn't believe it. It's supposed to be a Silvertip, right? And it was just poking me. And what I did was, I just kept using it. And the prickle all disappeared, and now it's awesome. So, if you do have a brush that does that with you, if it's one that other people report as being soft and stuff, then maybe consider just using it for a while. I think maybe it took me about 15 uses, 20 uses before the prickle disappeared. Now look here, this is very kind of pasty, and it's easily combining and looking like an early lather. I'm going to guess that Kaizen is their base to try to compete with the newer Barrister and Man and Declaration Grooming bases that are focused on moisturization, that sort of thing, ease of lathering. So we may not need to add too much water to this, so we'll see. 1 teaspoon. So the scent of the soap here, it's got bergamot, lemon, it's got 2 different peach notes in it, different peaches. It has orange blossom, cognac, tobacco absolute, and we're just at the halfway point of the ingredients. Isn't that wild? This already is feeling a little sluggish as I'm pulling, a little drag as I'm pulling the brush through it. So I think that is telling me it can easily take more water. So let's give it another teaspoon. It also has, the soap also has mimosa, leather, vanilla, dried fruit. It says actually dried fruits, so multiple fruits. Oak moss, sandalwood, and Himalayan cedar. So we'll see how many of those notes I can pick out. Still a pretty solid early lather here, so I'm going to keep pushing water into it. Interesting, it's not nearly as strong as it was from the tub. The peach scent is a little bit more muted. I don't know if my nose has just gotten used to it. Maybe a little hint of the tobacco I smell. Something fruity. And something woody, what I'm getting so far. You can pull the lather down, and then what we do is get about halfway under it, and then lift up, and watch how that kind of peak, the tower, develops. Slowly collapsing once I invert it over to the side. Let's feel it with our fingers. Since we do have 3 teaspoons in it, that's very slick, very creamy. That's a good base, it feels like. The slickness is remaining on my fingers once the lather, once my thumb kind of passes over it. That's feels really good. It also does feel like it could take a little bit more water. Nice and slippery once I rinse my fingers off. Let's just go ahead with 4 teaspoons of water. You know, why this brush was prickly and then changed is not something you see with a lot of Silvertips. Most of them are don't change very much once you get them. I mean, they may change just a little bit, but why it did that, I'm not sure. Is it maybe a coating at the factory, intent on preserving the hairs, you know? Do they just need to have some water on them and be worked a little while before some of them get unprickly? Now look at this. This is different than what I showed you in the very beginning, because we're getting the water in there and it is turning more into a kind of a marshmallow cream. You know, Rudd's Shaves is a very, very popular YouTube shaver, and for good reason. And he often does reviews, and he likes his lather a lot drier than mine. He often says that it should be the consistency of sour cream or yogurt, and to me that is way, way too dry, way too thick. This is already, you know, more wet than that. Now he says on his reviews that when properly constituted, it will be the density of, you know, sour cream or yogurt or whatever. I do think that's misleading for people, especially new folks, because when it's properly constituted, that is your own subjective preference. If you like your lathers wet, then your properly constituted lather is going to be very different than his. But anyway, I've asked him about that, and he just likes to do it that way. I understand he also does a lot of straight razor shaving, so I think he might be a good resource for that. See, now there we go. Now we can pull it all down again, and we've got more lather now than we did before. We had more stretch this time. Now you see how quickly it collapses like that? Why don't we go ahead and use it at this point and see what we get. All right, rinse my face. And I have my Declaration Grooming Tribute Splash loaded up for use after this, because it does have a peach element with the pineapple. So one would think it would be a good pairing with this. Let's see how this guy feels. He's a big knot, even though the knot diameter is not all that big. I think it's a good brush. Definitely not as soft as some of the other Silvertips out there, but if you have used like a Simpson or something, it might be softer than that. So it depends on your frame of reference. And some people might like, and it's not scritchy at all. It's just not quite as soft as some other really good ones out there. So, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't mind using this brush as my main brush. It's got enough backbone to kind of keep the tips at you, but it's very soft and relaxing. I mean, you can see how it does kind of bend and stay bent, and so it's definitely not going to have the same backbone or same feel as a two-band, you know, it just has more backbone. All right, give that a shot. It's really lightly scented. I so did not expect that. Given the amount of strength I was able to snort from the tub. Has my nose gotten used to, you know, so many of these notes? I don't think so. it's there, but I'm going to say a 3 to 4 out of 10, which is a little bit disappointing. Yeah, it sure feels like it's going to be able to perform. A little bit of tugging as usual for this age blade. Just a little uncomfortable, not really. Not too much worse than that. I don't really feel like this is, I mean, it feels pretty slick on my skin, but it doesn't really feel like it's kind of connected with my skin. I like to say bonded sometimes. So I don't really, I think there are just such better ones out there. But that could be me. I probably should try it a few more times. Maybe with different hydration consistencies. And let's rinse. Now, one thing we know, I've seen it happen time and time again, is that first pass can just kind of be drier than the rest of them. So let's see what happens. Some people might consider this brush floppy, but I don't really see it that way. It's really kind of a dense brush. And so parts of it may be floppy, but it does always seem to keep tips at you in a way that feels good and feels like it's doing its job well. And as usual with this blade, the first pass can be just a little tuggy, but after that it's fine, comfortable. This doesn't feel as slick as some of the better soaps out there, even some that might consider second string, like Fine Accoutrements or Mitchell's Wool Fat. I kind of like those a little better in terms of performance. And the scent, unfortunately, is just kind of on the weak side. And rinse. Right, third pass. Now, when I am working the brush on my face here, the strength bumps up to like a 5 or 6. I wonder what happens if I add a little bit of water to this. Does it magically change into something better? One way to do it is just to put drips on the side of your brush. Now, the current trend when developing new bases is not to make them more thirsty. It's actually to make them more tolerant of people who overload or don't hydrate well enough. And so I would guess that, you know, really pushing the water would not make it more well designed, but who knows? I guess what I mean to say is they seem to be geared more for drier loading, less water. Now that is a nice now, of course, we've got most of the hairs removed at this point, and so it is feeling nice and smooth. I definitely have to try to really add a lot of water to this base next time I use it. See if I like it. Somebody's making some racket out there. And we can take some beard lather, go the opposite with a little bit of stretching, the opposite direction here in this area that I have been doing. Very light. We'll see how that works. Yeah, it just feels kind of a little thick. I mean, I think it's well hydrated. It's almost like it has too much butter in it. Interesting. I'll definitely have to try it again with just shoving a whole lot of water into it. I mean, I put in 5 teaspoons of water into this mix. I mean, in that sense, it's very encouraging. It's nice to see a new base come out that, you know, needs a lot of water. I definitely wouldn't want to shave with this guy with less water than I'm using. We did get a good close shave, and I'm glad to report that it's not stingy on the lather that amount of soap produces. I think it was slightly more than a 1/4 teaspoon, and I do have definitely 2 passes of lather right here. So it may not be as good as Fine or Sterling or something like that. It's not as bad as something like Holy Cow or that sort of thing. So, so I'm happy with that. So that's pretty cool. And we'll just have to play around with it. I mean, look how elastic that is. And it still feels kind of too thick. Maybe those are just the ingredients, and even if I add more water, it's going to have that similar feeling. If those are skincare elements that are making me feel that way, I don't really care for them. I don't need them. I've got oily skin, so I'd probably pass on this base in general. And other ones like Milk Steak and Excelsior seem to do Zingari Man seem to do the skincare thing without thickening it up and making it kind of feel so heavy and slow for the razor. It wasn't a significant amount of drag, but that's just the general feeling. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would enjoy using it if it's all I had. Picking up some of those peach notes. Vanilla is usually easy to pick out, but it must not be in a large concentration here. To be honest, a lot of those notes just, I guess they're blended, you know, so well that I'm not able to pick them out of the group, is my guess. So it's a nice scent. I enjoyed it. It's definitely not too sweet. Peachy, fruity, woody. That's just kind of a vibe I get. I think it's a nice put together scent. I wish it were a little stronger. We'll use it again. Put a lot more water in it, see if that changes things. So here is the tribute, pineapple and peach with patchouli and I think vetiver maybe, to kind of anchor it down and give it kind of a earthy feel without being dirty, is what he said. Smells pretty good with this soap. And we are going to clean up. I think this is a beautiful handle. I like the color quite a bit. It's a little short for me, and because this ridge comes up right here, it usually means my fingers are gripping back here. And so there's really not a lot of grip to have leverage. And I do sometimes hold it like this, but this ridge right here is just a little too pronounced to be comfortable. It's another reason why I don't use this brush very much. So the Silvertip I have from Frank Shaving, now that I've stropped it on the towel, kind of dried it out a little bit, you can see how big it is. In the write-up, you can see the measurement. I could be wrong, it may be a 26, but I think it's a 24. And it's large, comfortable, soft, not quite as soft, like I said, as some others out there. But if this is cheaper than a golden nib brush and budget is important, then this might be a good way to go. Get still a soft brush without costing quite as much. These knots are available on eBay, is where I got mine. I do have another Frank Shaving brush, the Finest Badger, high density, and it does have gel tips, and it's got a pretty easy splay on that one as well. So in general, I think a pretty decent brush knot company with Frank Shaving, and this is a few years ago I got this, so I assume they're doing just as good work now. All right, feeling good. The splash is going nicely with this soap, with that peach note. I kind of expected it to, not all that surprised. I don't think vetiver or patchouli, the earthy notes in the splash, they are not in the soap, but probably enough woody type notes and spices that they blend nicely. Good shave, comfy, no irritation or anything like that. Nice close shave, no weepers or anything. So there we go. And my first Kaizen soap that I've brought to you guys. I'm sure there are lots of other reviewers out there that have done it. I think it's been out for a little while. So definitely do some other research if you want. Curious about the Kaizen. I don't have a lot of Ariana and Evans soaps. They've got some kind of risque labeling sometimes, and so I don't usually buy their stuff explicitly. This came in a group purchase, in a lot purchase, so I figured I'd bring it to you guys anyway while I had it. Scent strength a bit low, a little disappointed in that since it was so nice from the tub. Other than that, and then the performance, but we'll leave that as a question mark until we push more water into it and see what happens. All right, guys, you take care. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves, and I hope there's been something in this video that's going to be good for you and help you out. Take care. Have a good day.